is just, there's also support for getting NextRad with level 2 and level 3 data from a thread server. And why are you linking? Oh, I know. So what I want is over on the notebook, come down here to Siphon radar server. And so I'm just going to run through this. I don't think this one will be as hands-on, but basically the thread server has capabilities supporting querying what radar files are available. And that facilitates downloading the latest NIDS product, either maybe mesocyclone detection or the latest reflectivity data or velocity products or just the latest NextRad level 2 volume. So all those are available on threads. And so this just provides a way to hit that service. Or since we're at an EDU, this same service is available on top of the big NextRad archive that's now on Amazon. And so we have a TDS running in Amazon that can access that entire collection. And so you can make queries to the entire historical archive from Amazon.
You have to be on the cloud to hit that? Or
you have to, well, if you have to be at an EDU.
Oh, so from here I can.
You should be able to, yes. Now, with the caveat that last I tried to SSH into that box, I was having problems. So whether that works today at this time, I make no promises. But in general, that is something you can do, is from the EDUs, get to that TDS.
So what you can do with that once you have it, because your EDU you can only use for research.
Those are the kind of things I want to do.
That's not an Amazon limitation. That's because Unidata is paying for the bandwidth out.
Oh, okay. So,
but you can, the S3 data in general that's up there, that's go have at it. Although it will go away at some point unless Amazon gets some return and for them hosting that. But there's no physical limitations there. And then our TDS that Unidata is hosting, that's our dollars potentially. So we just lock it down to EDUs. So for hitting the radar service, here's, as usual, we import a TDS catalog and point Siphon at that catalog. So threads.ucar.edu/threads. And then there's this special catalog off of radar server. If you look at what's in there, we're looking at the catalog references that are on that top level catalog. We see we have a couple case study links, and we've got TDWR level 3 radar data. We've got NextRad level 2, NextRad level 3. So if you're not familiar with radar, the TDWRs are radars operated by the FAA for doing surveillance at the airports. Mainly microburst detection is the big thing that drove their creation. So we can hit that, get the collections. And then Siphon has a specific radar server class designed to facilitate talking to the threads. Radar query service, we just call it the radar server. And we can set up the radar server to point to that. And so we're going to go look at some NextRad level 3 products. And so we'll point the radar server at the URL for that. Once we've done that, we can look at the variables that are available. Those are the codes that, the 3-digit product codes. For those not radar experts, we can get a little bit more information looking at the metadata on the collection. We can get some better names here, like, what does DVL stand for? Oh, well, that stands for digital vertically integrated liquid. Or DU6 is the code for digital 24-hour precipitation accumulation. Now, for the queries, we have to use a 3-letter code, but at least you have an ability here to try to understand what some of those codes stand for. We can also get a list of the stations that are available. So there are a whole bunch. Suddenly strikes me now that it'd be nice if this list was sorted.
Is there a command to do that quick? Just like print sorted lists?
So actually, there's a sorted built-in thing in Python that will generate a list from it and put the items in sorted order.
Nice.
So that's easier. So, and then that stations object that's on RS. So RS was the name of the radar server object I created up here. that stations is just a dictionary. So if we actually want information on what the station, information about the station, we can pull out one particular one. Here I pull out TLX, which is Twin Lakes in central Oklahoma. So if I look at that, we get the ID, we have the elevation of the station, the latitude, longitude, and the name that I forget where that particular name comes from. But so that's the Oklahoma City / Norman radar. So much like we did for NCSS earlier, and just now with the station data, is we can set up a query to try and figure out what data are available. So again, we're going to import the datetime module, or import datetime from datetime. And set up a query. I'm going to say, okay, the station I want is FTG. That's Front Range in Denver. The time I want, I'm just asking for a single time, so it'll find the product that's closest to that time I specify. In this case, I'm just going to pass it the current time in UTC. And I'm going to ask for a variable N0Q, which is reflectivity data at the lowest tilt. So I do that. We see what the query string it actually generates looks like. We can check whether the query seems to be valid. Make sure there are no weird stations that it doesn't know about, or we don't ask for a bad product code. And then we can make the request. And unlike a lot of other things that we've done so far, that return data, what this service does is it returns a catalog of the files that match the query we asked for. So we can ask for more than one station. We can ask for a time range. I think you can ask for multiple products. So we'll return all of those, give you a catalog of all those that are available. So if we look here, we just got back a single bids file. And then we get that back. It's just one data set here we can work with.
How does it know? Is it around the time or something like that? Because if you do UTC now, it's going to give you, might be 2 seconds past.
Correct. So it's doing a nearest. So we have a couple of quick exercises we can do here. If you guys still feel like coding, or if you guys are toast, we can just keep going on. Okay. The going ons have it. So I know at the end of the day, like today, your brain's pretty baked. We don't want that. So to pull out the data, and we got that list of data sets. In this case, we just pulled out one. So I can look at the access URLs again. And so we've got OpenDAP access, so that allows us to just remotely download part of the data. We also have this HTTP server again, which we saw earlier with Genie, just allows us to download the raw file. There's also CDM remote. That's another thread-specific remote access protocol. So that's accessing the data without downloading the whole file. So for this example, we'll use the CDM remote one just to get a full suite of them. Common data model. So Siphon has support for the CDM remote protocol built into it. And so we can import a dataset object, works just like NetCDF for Python. And so we can import this dataset and point it at the URL that we got back from the catalog. And just like we were playing before with NetCDF objects, we can say, okay, what variables are in that file? Okay, we've got elevation, azimuth, gate, latitude, longitude. Most importantly here, base reflectivity, DR. So if we want to plot this, we need our coordinates, which are range and azimuth for radar data. And then we'll also pull out the reflectivity data that's in there. Here's the example that I gave yesterday using the broadcasting here. So we have 1D array of range, 1D array of azimuth, and we'll use broadcasting to get 2D arrays of X and Y, converting the polar coordinates to Cartesian. And then we also create a masked array here for the reflectivity data. So I want to get rid of all the points. I don't want to plot any of the points that are missing. In this case, the missing points are returned as NANs, floating point values for not a number. And so I want to create a masked array where I say, okay, here's the data for the masked array, ref. And then the mask any point where it's not a number. And then we do a little more work here to plot it up again. As usual, matplotlib inline, import matplotlib.pyplot as PLT. We also grab Cartopy, and then from matpy.plots, we grab the color tables again because it has a copy of the weather service color tables for reflectivity. They're pretty abysmal from a data visualization purity standpoint, but we're all familiar with them, so your brain knows what it's looking at as opposed to arbitrary tables. Set up a Cartopy projection for Lambert conformal centered at the radar longitude and latitude. Create a new figure with that projection. Let's see. Here's, adding the state borders again from the Natural Earth library or Natural Earth data set online. For counties, we have a shapefile in the workshop data. Took a really high resolution set of counties and kind of decimated it to try and get the county shapefile so we could, see something more than a big square for Colorado. And so Cartopy, in addition to having the other things, other support for maps, it has a shapefile reader. And so we could tell Cartopy to open up that shapefile, read it, and then add it to the plot. We set the plot limits to, in latitude, longitude space, we say plot, limit the plot from -109 to 102 and 37 to 42 latitude. Set up the color tables using the registry, and we want to get the NWS reflectivity color table, start at 5. Create a norm to start at 5 dBz and go up in 5 dBz increments. I don't know if we've seen p-color mesh before. So this is just another way of plotting the data as opposed to an IM show, which takes explicitly image data. P-color mesh plots a mesh of quadrilaterals. So that's a good match to plotting radar gates that aren't nice square pixels, but instead are these sort of trapezoidal shapes because of the polar grid. And I don't think we actually need this one anymore. It's working around a bug in Cartopy, which should be fixed. Famous last words. So if I run that, there we go. Not much going on in Denver right now. I guess there's a little bit of convection in the south. So I know I blitzed through that, but so this is here if you want to do some more radar stuff. And if anybody has any more questions, about working with radar data, that's where I started. So I'd be happy to answer any more questions about this, but I know not everybody's a radar geek. So any questions about this right now, or we can just move on to Sean's stuff on GitHub, which will be a lot less code intensive here.
This radar is always a PPI plot.
Yes. So the ones from NextRad are always, they're very much PPI oriented products. Occasionally you get a cross section, but I don't think they actually ship those across NOAA port.
So, but with this, you can do the Doppler or the.
Right. So if we wanted to, instead, we could, up here in our query, if you wanted to say Doppler velocity, I think that's, well, here. Up here at N0, what letter did they choose? Oh, well, the original radial velocity was a V, so now the new higher resolution stuff is N0U. So if I ask for Denver's N0U, keep running all the cells. We don't have base reflectivity anymore. We have base velocity, EV. And I'll change to the NWS velocity color table. And start at negative, I'm guessing here what their usual one is. We'll try that. What the hey? Clearly didn't quite get the middle point right, but
Can you combine several radars like this with velocity? What's that?
My question too.
you could certainly plot them. There's no code sitting there as is to like do a proper composite where you pick one. You only have one value per point. I mean, right now you can do a plot where I plot one radar and then plot another, and whatever one I plot last ends up on top.
You couldn't, I mean, like in this case, I think you had ref was the reference to the data. If you just, make two references, one for Minneapolis and one for across.
Absolutely, you could make the request and download the data. It's just what are you doing in terms of visualizing? How are you, where they overlap?
Right, take a maximum or a minimum.
You could.
What I was thinking it'd be nice to make a CONUS precipitation.
So if you're going that far, MetPy has lots of capabilities. But if you're going that far with radar data, what you want to look at is a tool called PIArt. So that's the Python ARM radar toolkit. So it comes out of ARM. It's developed at Argonne National Labs. They have some money behind it, and they have done a fantastic job creating a library for doing radar stuff, not just basic PPI plots, but running quality control algorithms, attenuation correction algorithms for your higher wavelength radars or your more research radars, tools for doing those gridding operations. So if you want to map a whole bunch of radars to a common grid and do things like you were just talking about the composite, this toolkit's fantastic for that. And so at that point, MetPy has good radar capabilities for, basic stuff. And I haven't even bothered going further down that line because PIArt's doing a fantastic job in that space. So
there's also the option of grabbing data from MRMS. And so that'll give you.
Yeah. So how many of you guys have heard of MRMS?
Oh, should have asked that.
Okay. So MRMS is the multi-radar, multi-sensor composites. It's produced by OU Sims, or it started there, and it's now distributed operationally across NOAA ports. So these are a variety of composite products, quality controlled QPE products from the national mosaic of next-red radars. These come across in Grid 2 format. So there's that, I would say, downside. Maybe not everyone would agree. But we host those on our TDS, our thread server. And so you can use, like we saw earlier with NCSS for the HER, you could use NCSS to hit our collection of MRMS and get some pretty good products that are already doing that. And they do things like lightning and rotation tracks. And there's a whole large, so under, I think it's forecast products and analyses, you have MRMS analysis. And so we have a base reflectivity field. There's model derived fields, which has, let's see here.
I didn't really have this working.
Warm rain probability above mean sea level. So if you needed some kind of, I think it comes out of the RAP or something for the probability of warm rain. That's one of those on the model ones. For the radar analysis fields, for instance, they have echo tops for 18 dBz or higher, or 30 dBz or higher, or 50 or 60. The height of the 50 dBz contour above the 0 degree C isotherm. et cetera. I mean, there's a whole slew of these parameters they put out. So
Looks nice and Godiva.
some of them are absolutely nice products. But I mean, the basic radar composite's already here over at the base reflectivity.
Yeah.
So that's your basic one, but they have a lot of other derived stuff, precipitation products and whatnot. So if you need a starting point for doing those kinds of things, they are already putting this out and putting it over NOAAport. So it's run practically operationally every 2 minutes. It gets updated. And actually, they're generating a 3D field of reflectivity every 2 minutes. They just don't send out the entire 3D field over NOAAport. So.
Unrelated question when you guys are done.
Okay. Well, I mean, I've talked about radar, and I know this isn't a radar crowd. So if there are any more questions about it, I'm happy to take them. But I don't think. Yeah.
How do you find the data set names for those? I'm looking for like lake borders.
So you're looking, okay.
Yeah, I'm
So
looking
natural
for
earth.
Yes. I kind of found it on their website, but what the links I see on there don't match the kind of name you had on.
So how did I do that? That's a good question. So features. So for the natural earth data, here's your
Yeah,
stuff.
it's a physical one under like lakes and reservoirs.
So here's our cultural data. So countries, first order admin, provinces, states, autonomous departments, states, etc. Okay, I need to move this so I can see the link that's popping up. Let's see. Okay, so where I think I'm getting it from, and this is where Cartopy's interface is probably a little, well, not horrible, just takes a little bit of work to use it. If you look at the URL when you bring one of these up, see up here, 50-meter admin 1 states provinces.
Yep, and it's just the
So-
links, but with underscores. And stuff.
Exactly. So
So I thought I did that for rivers and.
and actually here, if I, okay, so here's, okay, that's that. And actually, if I go to that page, here's a zip file where it actually has the name of the zip file. So it's, I don't know if you can see, it's right at the bottom.
Oh, with the underscore.
Yeah, it actually has the underscore. So that's where they're getting it from. It's a very thin wrapper to just pick out the name of the file it needs to download. So you do absolutely have to go scour the site and figure out which one you're looking for. But I know as I think of this off the bat, I wouldn't begin to guess how I would try and make this simpler and generic across all their different data sets. So. All right, well, I guess we can move on to GitHub and close out our day. What?
We got MR. I remember you getting it set up to work, but I didn't know we were actually serving.
Yep.
Man, we need to pay more attention to our own data set. MRMS
There's too much
is
to even
nice.
coming across.
Awesome. Okay, so like I said before, how many of you have a GitHub account? Have you tried logging into it recently?
I'm currently logged in.
Okay, if you go ahead and try to log in, and if you're able to log in, raise your hand. If you don't have a GitHub account, find someone with their hand up. Oh, dang, you know what?
What?
I need you to log into GitHub.
I've already logged into GitHub.
Okay,
It's like I log out.
I'm gonna make some stuff on your account.
Okay.
Sorry.
That can make me sad. Just don't go changing admin positions.
No, it's just gonna be a personal account.
Come over here and see the back. Come on up.
Okay.
Wow, you can do things on it. Well, I don't know what you're doing.
Make a repo, clone it, add something, push it.
Oh, remember when we went to?
Nah,
That's fine.
I think we had a
Well, I
good.
can use the repository afterwards.
Oh, yeah. That's also part of this nuking stuff.
Download and make share with people and have other people
Yeah.
contribute to. Remember when Grant was telling you to be an investor in GitHub? Maybe he told me
Okay,
that-
how many groups of people do we have? 1, 2. What's going on here in the middle? We got a clump of people with their own GitHub accounts, and we're good. Maybe not middle.
Okay.
So you're good. You all are good. Okay. So GitHub is interesting. So we've used Git already, independent of GitHub. They're not. You need Git to use GitHub, but they're not strongly dependent on each other. You don't have to have GitHub if you have Git. But what GitHub allows you to do is host projects or your code, have a place to, as you're keeping track of the changes you make locally, have a place to send your repository to that's off of your own disk as well. So it's almost like a backup copy, and that's free. It allows a place for users to go, or yourself, to go, oh man, I see this thing, it's a bug, or I need to clean this code up. Let me write a reminder to myself. Or I'm using your library and I know there's a bug, so I'm going to tell you that there's a bug, but I have no idea how to fix it. I just want to tell you that something's wrong. It allows you to do things like that. But it also allows you to, if say you have a fix for a bug, it allows you an easy way of contributing that code back without the hassle of sending patch differences through email, any number of things, creating patch files and this and that. So what we're going to do is on GitHub, we're going to create a new project or a new repository. So, new repository. So up in the top right corner,
You are, or we're all gonna?
we're all going to do it. We're all going to do it. So we're all going to create a new repository. Okay, so up in the top right corner, there's a little plus sign, kind of drops down. I want to create a new repository. So I'm on Ryan's GitHub account right now, and I want to make a new repository. You can give it a name, the name of your project or whatever you would like. I'm going to go with Flamebaz. That's the name of my repository, Flamebaz. Library for flaming baz stuff. Why not? Doesn't make sense. Doesn't have to. Just make up magic unicorns or whatever you want. Just whatever project you want. And so you have the choice of making it a public repository, so anyone could see it if they wanted to. You can also choose to make it private and only allow certain people to do things with it. Now, if you want private, I think a general account, you can have, is it one private repository?
I don't know if you get any by default, but with a micro accounts, you get unlimited now, and those you can usually, they have an EDU program.
Yeah, so it's pretty cheap if you want to send them a few bucks so that you can have unlimited private repositories. But really the idea behind GitHub is let's make things public. No matter how crappy it is, let's just get it out there, and someone is going to care enough to go look at it and help you fix it up and make it better, ideally. So we're going to make our library public, and GitHub really, really wants you to at least describe what it is you're trying to do. So you can say, you know what, initialize this repository with a README file. And there are certain things that you can do. We didn't cover what a git ignore file does in our Git stuff at the beginning, but imagine you have a repository of C code, and you're always compiling and getting objects output. You don't want to check those temporary objects into your repository. You just, anything with a .o, you just want to, and so the git ignore file allows you to do that. it's just a way of saying these kinds of files, they're going to show up in my repository, but I don't need to check them in. I don't need to share those. They're just temporary files. Ignore them. So you can select based on what you're doing. I mean, they have one for C, they have one for Python, so we'll use Python for now. Python is kind of standard stuff that you would want to ignore that your Python project's going to end up containing. And always important, you want a license on your code. So there's a ton of licenses. We like BSD 3, and I'll show you what that is. But if you go to opensource.org, they list a ton of different licenses and what those texts mean and what it means you're doing and what you're giving up and what rights you're giving people to your code. GitHub knows that these things are important, so they try to include it and make it easy for you to include when you're doing coding stuff. And so from there, we can create our repository, and now I have a Flamebaz repository for Ryan. Great. To look what we did, we automatically created a gitignore, and what that looks like, this is by default what people have found that people working on Python tend to ignore these things, and so some things make sense and some things are way out there I've never even heard of, but in general, these are good things to ignore that you don't want to check in. You don't want to check in any C extension shared objects. What you build on your machine as a shared object is not going to be useful to anyone else really, so ignore those. That's what's going on there. We can look at the license. Okay, so it's copyright Ryan May. It says you can redistribute it in source code form or binary form with or without modification. The only thing we ask is that you keep a copyright notice on it so you know who the original author is. And don't use my project name Flamebaz or anyone who has contributed to it to advertise that your product uses this and it's awesome. So don't use this for your advertising. If you want to use it as a private company, you know, don't hold us up and potentially ruin our name if your software sucks. Without prior permission. So it still gives them an ability to ask you, and you might say, hey, yeah, you can use my stuff, and I'd like that badge of honor or not. And then there's a block of text here that says, hey, this is as is. Don't run your nuclear power plant off of my code. It's not that great. You know, be careful. And so it's always a good idea to have a license with your code. Again, opensource.org goes through and shows you the different licenses, pluses and minuses. And if you think meteorology flame wars are bad, you should look at software licensing flame wars. And we also told it, give me a README file. And so that's my README file right now, Flamebaz. It's a library for flaming baz stuff. Okay, so now we've got a project up on GitHub. We want to work on it. So I'm going to go here to the clone or download, and I'm going to copy this address. Okay. And we'll go to my command line. I've started something new. I've started my dissertation. I've started a publication, and I want to track the text of my publication as well as the code for my publication, have it all in one location, whatever. I set up an empty repository with just the bare bones basic stuff, and now I'm going to git clone that URL that you copied off the clone part of the website. So just as a reminder, the clone part, so this is the top level of our repository, our new thing, and there's a clone or download, and so you can clone it. You don't have anything in yours?
We don't have anything in our GitHub right now.
Well, there's a README and a license and a gitignore.
All the license stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just the base scaffolding.
Okay, so I did a git clone, and now I'm on the desktop, so I can go into the directory Flamebaz. That was the name of my repository. I can see I have a license and a README. Woo! Yep. So let's say I want to change what's in the README file. I want to add something to it. So right now, if we do a get status, there's nothing changed in this directory. It's all the same. So get status, there's nothing, it's clean, we're good. I'm going to edit my README. I'm going to go here and say best lib ever, so that everyone knows this is the best library ever. Okay, now I can do a get status again. I've modified the README. We've kind of done this part, right? We've modified a file. Now we want to check in that change, right? So I can say get add readme.md. All right, now if I do a get status, it's showing me that that README file has been modified and it's been ready. It's ready to be, this change is ready to be committed. And so now I can say get commit. In this case, I'm going to do a -m for adding a message here and say, I told everyone how awesome I am. Word. Okay, so I'm going to commit that change. And the change I made was I basically told everyone how awesome I am, which is not true at all, but that's okay.
I apologize, but I'm about 20 steps behind.
Oh, that's okay. If you just want to follow along with these steps, that's good as well.
I don't know what steps you got here. I don't-
From where you were on the web, all of a sudden you flipped
Yeah,
to-
exactly, that's where I
Okay.
got one.
Oh, okay, so on the web, I created this empty project, or this project, right? And so did you get to this part?
So the URL, Sean, when they went to clone it, where'd you go?
Yep, clone download. And then the URL that comes up, I just copied that. And then
Clone.
from here, I went to the command line and said git clone that URL. And now I've got a local copy of my repository that I created online.
What's the get add that you did or get?
Ah, yes. Okay, so let's see, we'll go back up here. And I said, okay, so if you got the URL off the website, then we did git clone and that URL. Yours is going to look different. It might even say HTTPS instead of git at github.com. And then we cloned it. We went into that directory and saw what we had. We had a license file and the markdown file. So has everyone been able to clone their repository they created on Git and make it local? Who hasn't? Who doesn't see this on disk? We good back there? Do they have it cloned? Just going through and making sure the remote repository has been cloned on the local machine. Okay, so you got a license file and a README file there now.
No, not in this case. We missed the license.
Oh, that's okay.
I missed the reading.
That's okay. So you can create it. You can just create a new text file called readme.md or whatever. So create a file in there if you forgot to do that. Or just edit something that's in there. Edit the license if you want. So what I did is I edited the README file. Okay. And after I edited my README file, saved it, I did a git status. And Git told me that, hey, there's been a change here. You modified, in this case, README. So when you guys do git status, did you see that, or are you seeing that currently? Okay, there's a file that's been modified. So what we want to do is we want to say, okay, I'm done modifying that file. It's fixed. It's got what I want in it. So I want to add that to make sure that that change gets committed. So that command was git add, and then just the file that I changed or the new file I created. And after you add your file, say, okay, I know it's been changed. I want to save these changes. You can do a git status again. And it'll say, it'll give you some information. It'll say, hey, your stuff is updated with this thing called origin master. We'll talk about that in a second. And we're ready to commit some stuff. In this case, it's a modified version of readme.md or whatever file you edited. Okay, so once you had the file ready to be committed, so when you said git status and you saw that there's a file ready to be committed, changes ready to be committed, I did a git commit and then -m. The -m means I'm going to give it my commit message right here and right now. If you don't do this part, it'll bring up a text editor for you to type in your message. I'm just going to add it from the command line. So git commit -m, and then I added a message that describes the change I made. Okay. So we all good there? So this is just something you would do on your own to keep track of your own changes. As you go along, adding stuff, moving sections around in a paper, updating images, things like that, or updating code. Okay, and so I do a git commit, and git tells me, hey, here's what you just did. You committed this. Your message was, I told everyone how awesome I am. I changed a file by adding a couple lines to it. And so now if I want, I can say git log. They show me the commit logs here. And there's two of them. One was the initial commit. So when I created the repository up on GitHub. So on the web, I created this thing, and that's the initial commit here. And then I just made another commit because I edited a file and told everyone how cool I am. Which again, I'm not. And so locally, we've got that change committed. It's being tracked now. It's part of the development history or history of my project. But if I go back to GitHub and I hit refresh, if you look here, it still just says there's one commit. There's only been one commit to this repository. So when I did a git add the file and git commit the message on my machine, it's now saved to my Git repository, but I haven't yet sent that back up to GitHub to make sure GitHub knows about it. Okay, so if from the web interface, if I click one commit, we see there's been one thing, and it's that initial commit that I did. So now what I really want is to push my new stuff up. Made some changes, code's better, paper's better. Let's push that up to the web as well. So you've always got kind of your copy of the repository locally, but then you have the potential to have one or more remote repositories that have a copy of all of your stuff. And when you clone something from GitHub, you automatically get a reference to some remote repository, which is on GitHub. So if I say git remote, it'll tell me, hey, I know of a remote thing, and the name of that thing is called Origin. So github.com/your username/your project, that location way off in the cloud is actually referred to as Origin. So I can say git remote-v, and that'll tell me this repository called Origin is actually up on github.com. So what I want to do is push my changes to my origin repository. Now you can rename this if you want. You don't have to use origin. That's just the default one. So I can say, all right, git log. Sorry, git log. Yay. I have 2 commits. This is the new one. I want to make sure that goes up to my remote repository called origin. And the way you do that is through a git push. So I can say git push origin. Hit enter. And there we go. I've put all of my changes, all those commits that origin didn't have, and I sent them off to GitHub. So now GitHub is in sync with what I've got locally.
How many of you had that break hardware?
Right?
Oh, Rick broke. Not surprised. So it's gonna ask you to log in. So I've got mine set up with SSH keys to authenticate to GitHub. That's for username and password. Probably it's your GitHub account information. Yours just said error.
I got a 403 for forbidden all access.
Oh boy.
That was a lovely look.
I think it's the same.
It's an
403 is confusing. That's why I'm surprised it didn't.
yeah, 403 is weird. Okay, so if that was successful for you, let's go back to the web interface. And we can hit refresh. Actually, we can go back to the top level. Now it says 2 commits. If I go there, I see both of my commits. So that's nice.
How much space is on here?
Just on your browser.
On GitHub?
So reload.
Well, just won't push my stuff up.
I don't know if they have a specified limit,
It's supposed to be just.
a size limit.
It's not asking for
Code, there are some larger files you can put on there. I think there's a limit to binary files. Because right now Git doesn't do differences between 2 binary files. So what Git's actually doing is a diff on the text parts and then saving only the diff and tracking the diffs as it goes.
Get on a PowerPoint.
You could, but each time you're going to be committing a full copy of it. So if it's a 10 meg PowerPoint, you got 10 megs on your initial commit. The next time you make a change and push it up there, you'll have 10 more megs. But if you were to do your presentation in LaTeX or there's some JavaScript that'll let you do a nice presentation, or you can actually use a Jupyter notebook to do a presentation with, believe it or not. Those things store quite nicely, and you could track the changes that way. Yeah. And there should be a way to actually track changes in the PowerPoint relatively easily if you're using the most recent version of any of the Microsoft Office suites. So a lot of the settings, the markup, and I think even the text are stored in separate XML files, buried inside the thing called .doc or .ppt. Or most of that's actually now broken out and not just some big binary bomb. But I don't think Git knows that exists. I mean, I'm sure the developers know, but Git, the tool, doesn't intuitively know that, oh, these things actually have a smart way of storing. Okay, so has everyone been able to push changes up to their repository? Now what I want you to do is talk to a group next to you and get the URL for their project that they just committed and pushed to. So for example, Pete, what do you got?
My username is PJPOKRAN.
There you go.
PJPOKRAN.
Okay.
And it's Unidata-workshop.
Okay. So here's Pete's project. Awesome. So Exchange, go check out someone's project or go look at someone's project on the web. The switch. Come on, this is like freshmen in a classroom. They don't know each other, and they're like, I don't know. I can't.
Where we are, so.
I can't. Okay, so what we're doing? Were you able to push your
I
changes?
finally got it put.
Okay, awesome. So talk to another group and go to their project's webpage.
What's yours?
So / Doppler shift
/
flame baz camel case. Or actually class case.
There it is.
Okay, so I've got Pete's project up here. Does everyone have someone else's project to play with? I think we got a little confusion there in the back. Do you have someone else's? I'm sure you've done this before.
Yeah, you go to github.com and just create an account like you did on Facebook or Gmail.
Who runs it?
No, it's not. No, it's an open source software.
Okay, so
Hey, Sean,
Yep.
who runs GitHub? We have one guess of NCAR and one guess of NSA, neither of which come from me.
GitHub runs GitHub.
So
They have their own foundation.
it's like a nonprofit.
I don't know if they're nonprofit, maybe.
Doesn't matter. It's not run by, it's not an NCAR thing. It's
It's
not,
not an NCAR thing, it's not a UCAR thing, it's a
not
much
Google.
wider, bigger thing.
it's not Google.
No, there are other online services that try to do this sort of
Use
thing.
Git as a transfer maintenance.
Yeah, and you can actually have a repository on weather and be able to sync to it and do the same sort of things.
On our server.
Right,
Right.
and just without a web interface that makes it nice and free.
Yeah.
So you could push your repository remotely up to your server and keep a copy of it there as well. But GitHub, the nice thing about GitHub is it's got a lot of tools that
For collaboration.
for collaboration.
When you do
Exactly.
that, are you exposing yourself to possible viruses and things like that?
No, and I'll show you why.
No, I assume we're gonna pull a copy and pull a copy of yours.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet. Okay, so we've all got someone else's project up. Great. And I'm going to go into the README file of Pete's project. You can check something else out. This is a test of GitHub stuff. You know, I don't agree with what he's got written here. I would like to make a change to this. Now, since I don't own this repository, I just can't go in and change stuff and push it there and make it and fix it the way I want. What I can do, though, is I can make a copy of his code by doing what's called a fork. So I'm going to fork his repository. Fork. I'm going to do it as Doppler shift in this case. As you can see, the stupid, it burns. I've got to go fix some stuff. So I'm going to fork it under my user. And so now I've got a copy of his code up on GitHub that I can actually make changes to if I want. That's not going to change his code. It's just going to change the copy I have. So if I find a bug or wrong information and I want to try to fix that, I forked his, and now I can start playing with it.
Does he know you did that?
So if we go back to Pete's repository and we look at, so at the top, there's a whole lot of things here. There's code, issues, pull request. Ryan has a couple extra things that you guys won't see, like boards, burn down wiki. but you should see graphs. You see graphs up there? Okay. So here's the people that's contributed to this repository. Pete, he's made.
The fork stuff, that's not working for me.
Okay, Ryan will come back. Is it network? So right now, because I haven't made any changes on my fork of his repository, it's not showing up here. But once I make a change and commit it, then under this network graph, it'll show that, oh, someone's made a copy of my code and made a change to it.
There's also in the upper right corner, that little, it goes to the same page, but it gives
Yeah.
you a count of how many forks you have.
So
Members shows them.
Members does too?
Yeah, it shows a little tree of who's
Oh.
got it.
Okay.
there we go. Awesome.
I've never done it on a project so simple where I can actually understand what's going on here.
Yeah, I know. I know. Okay, cool. So, Pete, your project's popular.
Everybody likes my project.
But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to my fork of that now. Click here. Will it just take me there?
Mhm.
No. Okay. So it's a good way to get back there.
Go back to members.
You just go to your.
Members.
And mine.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So I've decided there's something here that I want to fix. And so I've got a repository now under my account. It's up on GitHub. What do I need to do to get it locally so I can start changing junk? There you go. Yeah, I'm going to clone it. So I took his code, I forked it. So I've got my own copy now. Now I'm going to clone that down to my local computer. So remember, under the clone or download URL, going to grab that URL. This stuff becomes muscle memory after a while. And so then I'm going to go back to my terminal. Right now I'm still in my Flame Baz repository. I'm going to go up a directory. So I'm just going to clone this somewhere. So git clone. So this is my fork of Pete's stuff. So Unidata workshop. You want to walk around and see how people are doing? Okay, so I now have my hands on a copy of Pete's code on my computer, and I can start to write these atrocities.
He's not allowed to touch my code anymore.
Okay, now before you start necessarily changing and committing stuff, anytime you're going to try to improve someone's code, it's a good idea to make a new branch. Really good idea. Rather than working on what's called the master branch, even though you have a copy, just make a new branch. So I can say git. Does anyone remember from the first day? Git checkout dash B, and then I'm going to call this Sean's Fix. That's the name of my branch. You call it whatever you want. This is Sean's Fix. All right, so I just made a branch. So I do an ls. I still have the files in there. If I do a git status, it now tells me that I'm on branch Sean's Fix. And there's nothing to commit. I haven't made my fixes yet. Yep.
Those are Pete's files, right?
They're copies of Pete's files, what he had up there. No changes to them yet. So I'm going to go into his README. I'm going to change it. This is a test of GitHub stuff. It may suck, but Flame Baz is the best. Yeah. Not only do I need to let people know how cool my stuff is, but I need to put their stuff down too. You would be surprised how often this actually happens, by the way. Okay, so I've made a change now. Now I'm going to commit that change. So git commit -m. My message is going to be fixed Pete's false add.
You didn't have to add that first?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Let's see what happens. Yeah, it goes, hey, 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 haven't added anything. Good job. Yeah, so it's red. It says this thing's modified, but it hasn't been staged for a commit. So I can do a git add readme, the thing I changed. Okay, and through the magic of bash history, I can simply push the up button and get my command back as I typed it. And now I've made my fix. And so now I'm going to push that up to GitHub. But where am I pushing it? Am I pushing it to my repository? Or am I going to push it to Pete's repository? What's going on here?
You can't push it.
You can push it to but he has to accept the changes.
You can push it to his if he's given you permission to beforehand. But we don't even have, let's see what remote repositories we know about. We have, so git remote -v. So it looks like I know about one repository called Origin, and that's under Doppler shift Unidata. So that's my own account. So what I'm going to do is do a git push origin, and then I think I have to tell it a name to call that branch remotely.
Well, you just gotta tell them what you're pushing right now.
Okay, so I'm going to say git push origin. So I'm going to push this thing to origin, and the thing I'm going to push is Sean's fix, which is the name of my GitHub branch I made, or my local Git branch that I made. So give that a try, see how that works. Ryan, you might need to.
I got the same old error.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, because you're the so we just need to go in there again.
Okay, so who's been able to push up? You've pushed, you've pushed, you've pushed. I don't know if they've pushed. You've got to go. So you miss all the fun fireworks. Log in later and you'll see what they've done. Okay, so once you've been able to push the changes, let's go back to the GitHub website.
You don't see it on your HTTP page, right?
I don't see anything about what I just pushed.
So, you know, that's-
I did.
Okay, so it's telling me on the web interface now. Remember, I'm on my user, my account, Unidata Workshop. So this is my copy of Pete's code, and it's telling me I just pushed a new branch. So that's nice. But what I'd like to do is get that change back to Pete. Not just keep it for myself, but actually give it back to Pete and see what he thinks. So Ryan, are you good back there to?
Maybe a minute.
Yeah, I can't get mine pushed even though I put my password in. Well, we tried to do that.
Usually when you start, it gives you that option.
Yeah, that was weird. It didn't, but, oh, there you go.
I should just be trying to push up to, I guess, Carol's. Should I be pushing up to hers?
No, so do git remotes or git remote -v. Let's see what you got.
Okay.
So this was Sarah.
Okay.
Sarah's on the
Yes.
There's a-
So get put. You want to go to origin, and then you're actually.
Okay, so I changed was in this spot, so if I click on this, I'll be able to see it. And with the branch.
Okay.
Okay, but it's
here, so where is it now?
It's on his fork of Sarah's code,
Sarah's code.
on his account.
It's account.
It's account on GitHub.
Now, I wanted Sarah to know I had done this, so I could say, hey, Sarah, here's some.
That will be the next step that Sean's gonna do.
Oh, okay.
We should just get one.
Why? Crown your teeth in here.
What's going on here? Okay, I'll let Ryan catch up. We'll keep going here. We're almost to the glory. Okay, so I looked at Pete's stuff and I went, man, this is trash. I need to fix this. And so I made a fix. I pushed it up to my repository. So that's good. And now what I want to do is go let Pete know that there was a problem, and I'm super awesome because I fixed it for him. So I'm going to go to his repository. So under my repository here, so Doppler Shift, Unidata Workshop, I've pushed my fix up to that. It's showing that I have two commits. I can change the branch, so I can go to the branch that I just created and pushed up to GitHub and see what's there. So there's Pete's change, and then here's my fix that I added now when I look at Sean's branch, or Sean's fix branch.
I only see master on there.
So for you only on your account, right?
I'm looking at Doppler Shift Flame Baz, which I uploaded a copy of mine.
Right, but you won't see it on Doppler Shift Flame Baz.
Oh, it's just on mine.
It'll show it on yours because you pushed to your copy.
So, no, wait a minute. Oh, okay. I got it. So I should be on my Flame Baz.
Yeah, and now you'll see.
Switch to my fix branch.
Yeah, but now you'll see it. Okay, so I got Pete's code online. I made a copy of it online. I pulled it down. I made my fix. I pushed it back up to my copy online. And now I want to make sure Pete knows that this has happened. So what you can do, if you do this, if you push to your copy of the code, so I push to my copies of Pete's code. When I go to Pete's copy of his code, it will tell me, hey, I recently pushed a branch to a clone or to a fork of this repository. Would I like to compare with what Pete has currently and make a pull request? And so a pull request through GitHub is the way you would share contributions.
Requesting them to pull in your changes.
Yeah. And so I'm on Pete's copy. So Pete, you should be on
Your
Doppler Shift's copy.
Actually, the green button will appear on any of them.
Oh, cool.
Hey, you just pushed this. Do you want to do something with it?
Yep. Okay. So I'm going to say compare and pull request. All right. And it's going to say, okay, what do you want to try to base this on? And so the base fork is Pete's copy. He's got the canonical one. He's got the true blue Unidata Workshop repo now. And I want my change to go into his master branch. So that's what this is saying here. And I want the change to come from my copy of his work. So Doppler Shift Unidata Workshop. And I want that change to come off of this branch, Sean's fixes. That's what all of this means. And so it's possible I could say, no, take my copy, but use the changes on this branch. And GitHub's going to go, they're the same. You didn't make any changes to your copy of Pete's code, your master branch. No changes there. But your copy of Pete's code, Sean's fix branch, there are changes. And so right here, this is just the comment I added when I made my git commit on my machine. And so now I can leave a comment if I want. So, yo, suck it. All right, and if I want to make sure the changes that I made, all of them made it up there, it'll show me the changes and the differences. So yeah, I changed the README file. I added 2 lines. I added a blank line, and I also added that Flame Baz was the best. So everything looks good, and I'm going to make a pull request. So what you should do is go up to your GitHub repository, your clone of your buddy's account or your buddy's repository, and make a pull request. And so when you've completed your pull request, kind of give a little wave.
I wasn't sure where to go to do the pull request.
Ah, okay.
Push the button and say create pull request.
Then you type that and
So let's see.
you make your pull request.
Sarah should have a message.
Sarah will get a message and she can.
When she logs on, then you get one.
So is this your own account? And this is the clone.
You can close, I think.
Oh, you did Carol's, and so
Create it.
hers was.
She's the only one that can merge it into hers.
So is
This
this
just says
Carol's?
this.
Yes.
There's her name.
You want to go to your users.
Yeah, well, it basically actually creates an issue on
So
the
your copy of Carol's.
same bugs and forth, the same thing. It's like, okay, here's this thing sitting here. What do you want to do with it?
So it wasn't, so, but I wouldn't see that.
Well, if you go to her repository,
If I go to her repository. Oh, there we go.
Okay, so now,
so here's
if you go master, let's see what happens. Click there. Oh, Rick sits.
yeah, there you go.
There we go.
There you go.
So,
You go there. You can go to the list of all the pull requests in her repository.
and so you should be able to do a new pull request.
But that has done nothing to her code.
Nope. It's the same thing. I did this thing.
You
Would you
wanted
like-
to go
I mean, so you can go to
her
the Met
repository,
repository there,
her master group,
4 or 5 of
and the
them.
changes is from you.
Right.
On,
Or I've left for myself that I need to do something more. This is not ready to go in yet, but it'll work.
and so that all looks good.
That's pretty cool.
And so what you want to do is, I wonder if this is because the Firefox version is
Yours.
not everything is showing up. So if you scroll down,
That's message. That's up to
Sarah.
Sarah. Do something.
you've already made a pull request. So you can branch.
I wouldn't if I were.
Yes.
On the
So-
web.
So
This is
the
where
Sarah
it is.
is to
Her comment.
projects just kind of defined. Hey, this is
Oh, really?
what we're doing now. Usually I just leave a master.
So you're in a position.
Yeah.
Now you're waiting.
Yesterday, the day before, we're developing the Northeast Gulf and the Southeast Coast, so. This morning, we did.
Yeah, if you were doing separate branches.
Like
I would
Charlie.
advise people to do it that way, but for instance, if you had a
Start with the
stable
secretary,
branch
yeah.
release, that you pull in one, two, and a master data branch, you could have those.
I want to go back
All right.
to my initial.
I think frequently the development model usually is to merge those things into masters that people bring them into the bug fixer piece and that's there. But that's up to each project how they want to manage this.
I looked at
Yeah.
the one on
It's just
Hurricane.
Here's my branch, here's your branch.
Didn't seem to have any.
It's pretty much arbitrary.
They don't necessarily call it 4th of July.
All branches are considered equal in the eyes of Git. Other than-
Okay, so-
the chain of order what happened.
At this point, we're at the mercy of the other person to either accept or reject our pull request. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to the original repository I created. So Doppler shift. And where's my
They're not going to come up there.
Flame Baz? Here we go. Okay, so this is my original repository, and I can look across the top here where the tabs are, and it says, oh, pull request 1. Well, cool. Someone's made a pull request against my awesome repository. Beer. Yes, I'm loving this already. So someone, PJ Pokran, he made a pull request for beer 4 minutes ago. So let's take a look at that. I thought your library would be better with beer. And so let's see what he's proposing to change here, because this is important. All right, so there's the commit. Files change one file. Would be better with beer. Now, you know what? I like that, but I have something to add here. So I'm going to say, that's cool, but can we make it a stout? No IPAs here. Okay, so I'm going to comment on it. And so Pete and I could go back and forth just kind of commenting on this change. He could also go in and back on his repository on his local machine, change that message and that he edited in the README file and say, it would be better with a stout. I go, yeah, there we go. And let's say he did that, he pushed it up. The pull request will get automatically updated. Now I like it, so I'm going to merge his pull request. Finally got to the point where, yes, I want this. So I'm merging this pull request from Pete's Fix, beer. I'm going to change this message a little bit and just say, because everything is better with beer. And confirm the merge. And there we go. And so if I go, so I just merged in Pete's changes with my code. If I go back to the top level of my repository, I can see now there's been 4 commits. I merged in stuff from Pete. Here's Pete's actual commit. And so that's preserved. Everyone's going to know that Pete thought things would be better with a beer. And it's part of the official history of FlameBaz now. And I can go in and thank him for that. So what I would do, you could go to pull request, say I wanted to thank Pete. It's already closed because I accepted the change. But I could go in and leave a message and say, thanks. And since I know Pete's username, if I do the @ symbol like on Twitter, it's going to suggest his name. I'll say, thanks. Beer is great. And let's see here. So you can really style these up if you want. If you remember Markdown, we talked about Markdown sort of towards the beginning of the workshop. GitHub supports Markdown. And I happen to know that there's some extras. Let's see. Images maybe. Looking for a beer emoji.
Beer.
Ah, yes.
Well, I'm guessing if it doesn't work, I wouldn't use that. I've not used that one, but it's whatever for the emojis.
Beer. Okay, so I can do a preview and see what that's going to be. So thanks, beer's great. So there's sort of a social aspect too to sharing your code around. I have been thanked by having beer bought for me before, and I've bought beer for other people as a thank you. So that's not too far out of the line there. So that's an example of sharing some code. Now you're not always going to know what the fix would be or be able to contribute code to make things better. But what you could do is point out that there's an issue. Okay, so
What are you trying to do?
I'm going to go to my copy of Pete's stuff. I'm going to go to Pete's copy, so the main repository for Pete's code. And I'm going to say, you know what? I have an issue to report. So I went to issues. There's no issues opened at the moment. But over here, I can create an issue and say, I'm missing something. You need beer, your stuff too. Any ideas about how we could get that working? So I don't know what to do to get beer in his code, but it's obviously missing it. I want to make sure he knows it and see if he has any ideas on where to go from there. And of course, we'll do that. I submit a new issue. So now Pete's going to get an issue, and he's going to see it in his repository, and someone's going to say, hey, there's a bug here. You don't have beer. I could help you out, but I don't know how, or I have no idea how to help you out, but I think you should know that there's a bug. Here's a bug report. And so he can decide what to do with it from there. And so issues is something that you get by using GitHub, and it makes it really convenient for tracking bugs and deciding on what you're going to work on next in your code. Or you could also use it as a list of things you want to do. You can keep track of these great ideas you have at 3 in the morning at the bar, say. Be like, yeah, I need to look into that. You make an issue, and you can come back to it later. So you can use it almost as like a personal task list. And Pete, you've got 3 pull requests sitting there. All right, so I'll let you have fun with those. But that's sort of the very basics of GitHub. Now, it may seem trivial what we've done, but if you look at something like Unidata, Unidata Python workshop, for example, oh, we've got a pull request sitting there. We have 6 issues open. So we've got some issues that we've opened. A lot of them are from people, or all of these are Unidata people. So these are things that we want to do and we want to add, and it's a reminder to do that. Oh, I'm hanging out here. I've got a pull request. And if we want to look and see who else forked it, these are the people who have forked our workshop. Made changes, have maybe submitted requests, maybe not. If we look at network, now we can get a visual representation of who's done what where. And so here's me. I created a branch called prompt where I'm going to upload a file that will let you see the name of your branch and it color-coded in your terminal. And so it's just sitting there. But since then, there have been a lot of other changes too. So here, Ryan made a branch, or I made a branch. I fixed some stuff. I made a pull request. It got merged back in. Here, I made 3 different commits, made a pull request. It got merged back into the master. And so this morning we did a git pull, and that updated those changes. And so you can see who's made changes to your stuff and where that's been done. And so it gets even, well, in this case, someone made a branch. That was Ryan. He made a branch back here. Some things were committed to GitHub in between, and then he got done with it, and he made a pull request and merged it in over here. So even though he started at this point in the development of the main,
Right, that's chronological, I think.
yep. So he started here at this development point. Oh, and then your commit came in. You had rebased it probably. And then we made a pull request and got it into the main code. And for something really crazy, we can go to, say, our Threads project. Here we have 128 tickets of various things that are open. To give you an idea of how crazy this is, we've added labels. And so what we could say is, show me all the open issues where the labels, let's see, that deal with units. So what issues are open in threads that deal with units? None. That's nice. One's closed. And so, okay, fine. Let's do docs. I know there's some open.
Nope. Oh, you've got them.
I still have unit up here. And so you could actually add labels to your issues and be able to sort out, these are all the doc issues that we have and we want to fix. And so if I'm out and I'm feeling tired, but I still want to do some work, I could probably pick off some of these documentation bugs, and I can see those pretty easily just by using the GitHub issues. Looks like we've got 3 pull requests hanging out on threads. We've had 320 since we put this up on GitHub. And if we look at the members graph for threads, quite a few forks. And then in terms of code we've accepted from other users, this might take a little bit to build this graph, but whether you're a big project or you're a little project or you're somewhere in between, GitHub has tools to offer that make Git that much more cool and that much more useful. Yeah, so we've had lots of, oh my God, what happened there? Yeah. Cool. So this is the graph of our commits and where they've came from and where people's branches currently stand. And some of them are dead, but not all of them. In terms of the branches, not the people. God, I hope none of the people are dead. Yeah, and I think that's got it. Now, if you've noticed something during the workshop that you think could be more clear, or you would like more information about, or there's been just an outright typo and you want to fix it, you can go to Unidata Python workshop. You can go to our GitHub repository. You log into your GitHub account, make an issue. Say, this would be nice to have, or, hey, have you thought about this? Or I fixed this typo in your notebook, here's a copy of it, that kind of thing. Or, hey, I made this really cool notebook. You guys want to take a look at it? You could send us to your GitHub repository with your really cool notebook. Be like, oh yeah, we could add that to our MetPy examples, for example. It could be part of the gallery that way. Yeah.
Yeah, and those opening issues and pull requests go for MetPy and Siphon as well. So if you find anything, opening issues is great. I know this is a lot to churn through, but pull requests are how we operate too. We make pull requests on our own stuff.
Yeah.
It's a good way to check things out and do some sanity checks as well with pull requests.
And so all of Unidata's stuff, just so you know, everything we develop is on GitHub with a very, very few exceptions. But for example, there's the LDM, there's AWIPS2, there's the IDV. These things may sound familiar or may not, but NetCDF is up there, NetCDF-C, NetCDF-C++, NetCDF Fortran. And we have, really, 16?
16 people with GitHub accounts.
So in terms of developers, though, so 16, 15, 14.
Only 16?
People with GitHub accounts. Not everyone at Unidata has a GitHub. All the developers do.
All developers have a GitHub account, yeah. Not every one of these 16 people is a developer either. So if you thought Unidata was back up in a high rise on the 15th floor of the New World Order Center in Boulder, we had hundreds of people. Not so much. We're pretty small, actually. Oh, Russ isn't even there now.
Jeff's not on there, huh?
Weber?
Yeah.
No, Weber's not on there. He doesn't do a lot of development stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we're somewhat small. But anyways, all of our software, except for, is ADDE up there? I don't think so.
No, that's good. It's not.
And then, of course, Makaitis X isn't up there. I don't know how Tom keeps track of any changes he does to Makaitis X, but I'm sure he has something.
All right.
All these CBS here on this end.
Okay. So they probably
I'm not sure if it's in Subversion or CBS.
It's access CDS.
Oh,
All right. Well, that's GitHub and Git. I said that's GitHub and Git. It's in a nutshell. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
We'll be sending out to Pete and Wayne a survey to try and collect some feedback so we can do better next time. Yeah, that's all I got.
All right, thanks, guys.
Oh yeah, we'll be around Wednesday and Thursday.
Yep.
So you know what the schedule sort of looks like. You know when there should be breaks and not. Feel free to swing by. you know where we'll be.
Yep.